AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened with her bridal party. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 32F. Growing up, we were close for a while, but the dynamic shifted significantly when I entered high school and she started going through a rebellious phase. Over the years, we've had periods of closeness, but there has always been an undercurrent of tension. My parents tend to favor Emma in ways that frustrate me, but I've tried not to let it affect my interactions too much. About 6 months ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, 33M. When she first announced it, I was genuinely happy for her. I asked how I could help, and she immediately put me in charge of organizing her bridal shower and coordinating with her bridal party. At first, it felt like a huge honor, and I wanted to make it special for her. But as the months went on, things began to unravel. Emma's bridal party consists of 5 bridesmaids, including me, her 2 closest friends from college, and 2 cousins. Initially, I assumed we would all collaborate equally on planning, but Emma started micromanaging everything. She expected us to adhere to a strict budget for gifts, dresses, and even hair appointments. On top of that, she insisted that her college friends handle the majority of event planning, leaving me mostly responsible for communicating their ideas to her and paying for a lot of logistics out of pocket. The breaking point came with the bachelorette party. Emma wanted a weekend getaway to a resort in another state, which I was happy to help plan as long as costs were reasonable. I suggested several options that would keep expenses under control, but Emma and her friends rejected all of them, insisting on a luxury resort that was almost 3 times my suggested budget. I explained that I could not afford the full cost, and I thought the reasonable solution was to have everyone pay their fair share. Instead, Emma told me that as her sister, I should step up and cover more because it's my responsibility to make her happy. I felt blindsided and uncomfortable. I reminded her that I already spent hundreds of dollars on the bridal shower, decorations, and gifts, and I wasn't in a position to cover the extra luxury expenses. She accused me of being cheap and unsupportive and told me I was ruining the experience for everyone. Her friends piled on, suggesting that if I really loved Emma, I would prioritize her happiness over my financial concerns. I tried to explain that love doesn't require me to go into debt, but they dismissed my reasoning. Eventually, I told Emma I would attend the bachelorette party only if I could stick to a reasonable budget. She refused, saying that she didn't want me there if I was unwilling to do what was necessary to make the weekend perfect. Feeling hurt and pressured, I backed out. The argument ended with her saying that I was choosing money over family, and that she would make sure to remember this in the future. After that, I tried to remain neutral, hoping to salvage the rest of the wedding planning process. However, tensions only escalated. A few weeks later, I was asked to help with seating arrangements, and when I suggested a few ideas that would avoid potential conflicts between distant relatives, Emma reacted angrily, claiming that my suggestions were overthinking everything and insisting she would handle it herself. When I tried to step back politely, she accused me of abandoning her and told our parents I was being uncooperative. The final straw came 2 weeks before the wedding. Emma announced that she had decided to ask a local wedding planner to take over all aspects of the event, including the bridal shower, bachelorette party, and seating. She told me I could be a guest, but would not have any planning responsibilities. I felt relieved and hurt at the same time. I thought this would reduce conflict, but Emma later sent a group message to the bridal party that was basically a detailed comparison of everyone's contributions, singling me out as barely involved and less committed. Her friends agreed in the chat, making comments about how I wasn't a real team player. I tried to defend myself privately, but Emma told me I was overreacting and needed to get over it if I wanted to attend the wedding. After reading that message, I realized that attending the wedding would feel like endorsing her behavior. It seemed like she was more concerned with appearances and punishing me for not financially supporting her vision than actually celebrating her marriage. I told Emma that I could not attend. I offered to send a gift and wrote her a long message explaining my reasons calmly, emphasizing that I loved her and wanted her to have a happy wedding, but could not participate in an environment where I felt disrespected and unfairly treated. My parents were upset. They called me selfish and said that my absence would break Emma's heart, and cause family drama. My friends have mostly supported my decision, saying that boundaries are important and that I shouldn't compromise my financial stability or self-respect. I have received mixed messages from distant relatives. Some understand my position, but others accuse me of overreacting and suggest I should just attend and smile. Since then, Emma has mostly avoided direct contact. She posts on social media about her wedding plans and occasionally makes subtle remarks about my lack of support in front of family. I've been trying to maintain a polite but distant relationship, but it's difficult because I feel hurt and betrayed. I keep thinking about whether I should just attend the wedding to keep the peace, but I also feel like doing so would invalidate my feelings and set a precedent that it's okay for someone to mistreat me if they want my participation. I'm now in a position where the wedding is happening in less than 2 weeks, and I have made it clear that I won't attend. My parents and other family members keep asking me to reconsider, and I feel like this decision has turned into a major family conflict. I'm trying to hold my ground without completely burning bridges, but the tension is overwhelming. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after everything with a bridal party and her expectations. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to host my fiancé's large extended family for a week in our small apartment, even though they say it's tradition. I, 32F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Daniel, 34M, for about a year. We've been living together in a modest 2-bedroom apartment for 3 years. Daniel has a large family. He's one of 6 siblings, and they all live in different parts of the country. His parents are retired, and they enjoy traveling, but his siblings and nieces/nephews are always moving around for visits, holidays, and reunions. Daniel's family is extremely close-knit, which I admire, but they can also be very demanding and overbearing. Recently, Daniel told me that his entire family wanted to come and stay with us for a full week during their summer vacation. That would be 9 adults and 3 children staying in our 2-bedroom apartment, which has 1 bathroom and barely enough space for 2 people comfortably. Daniel said that this has become a family tradition and that our place was chosen because it's centrally located. He also added that his parents are very excited to see us and that it would be disrespectful to say no. I immediately felt overwhelmed. I told Daniel that our apartment is too small to host so many people for a full week. There isn't enough space for everyone to sleep comfortably. The kitchen isn't large enough to accommodate meal prep for that many people, and I have a work-from-home setup that requires quiet during the day. I also value our privacy and personal time. Having 12 extra people in a small apartment for a week would be incredibly stressful and disruptive. Daniel insisted that we could make it work. He suggested we rent air mattresses, take shifts in the living room, and set up a makeshift schedule for the bathroom. He also said that I'm being unaccommodating and that his family would be hurt if we said no. I tried to explain that I am not refusing to host them out of malice, but the practical realities make it impossible without causing stress, conflict, and logistical nightmares. I suggested alternative options, booking a nearby Airbnb or hotel, inviting them for a weekend instead of a week, or having smaller groups visit at different times. Daniel got upset. He said I'm being selfish and unsupportive, that this is a once-a-year opportunity to have the family together, and that if I can't host them, it feels like I don't care about him or his family. He also said that everyone else in the family manages to host each other without complaints, so I'm overreacting. I tried to explain that other families often have larger homes, second homes, or vacation properties, which makes hosting feasible, but he argued that we should make do because it's tradition. The tension escalated when I brought up the logistics. Sleeping arrangements would be extremely cramped, and the living room would need to serve as a bedroom, which eliminates space for day-to-day activities. The kitchen is tiny, so preparing meals for 12 people plus us would be overwhelming. We would have very limited privacy, and I would have no quiet space to work, relax, or sleep properly. I also expressed concern about cleaning up after so many people, which I know would fall mostly on me, since Daniel has a pattern of leaving chores to others. Daniel's parents called me a few days later and said that they really don't understand why I wouldn't want to host. They said it's important for family bonding, that it's a tradition, and that refusing makes us look ungrateful. I told them the same things I told Daniel. Our apartment is too small, it's logistically impossible, and I want to support the family in other ways, such as helping them find accommodations nearby or hosting a smaller gathering later. They were not pleased and implied that I was prioritizing convenience over family. Other family members have chimed in on social media, posting comments about how everyone hosts each other and questioning why our apartment can't accommodate them. I feel like I'm being painted as the bad guy for stating a practical limit. Daniel is now frustrated with me, and our conversations have become tense. He keeps saying that if I can't compromise, he might go along with his family and host them elsewhere, which could make me feel excluded and uncomfortable. I've tried to compromise multiple times. I offered to research nearby rentals that could host the family for the week, suggested splitting the visit into smaller groups, and offered to organize dinners or day trips with the family to maintain bonding. Daniel refuses these options, insisting that nothing is acceptable unless everyone stays at our apartment. I also worry about my own mental health. Hosting 12 people in a tiny apartment for a week would likely result in sleepless nights, stress, arguments, and exhaustion. I work from home, and even minor disruptions impact my productivity and well-being. I want to support Daniel and maintain a good relationship with his family, but I also have boundaries and practical limitations. So, AITA for refusing to host my fiancé's entire extended family for a week in our small apartment, even though they say it's tradition and everyone else is expecting it. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a long-standing family issue. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, but especially with my sister, Emma, 35F. Growing up, Emma was the golden child, and while my parents were loving, they were extremely biased towards her achievements and needs. I spent most of my childhood feeling invisible, and while I tried to shrug it off, the resentment slowly built over the years. Despite this, I've always maintained a semblance of civility for the sake of family gatherings and holidays. Fast forward to last year, Emma got engaged to her now fiancé, Dan. From the beginning, I had some reservations about their relationship, mostly because I've known Dan for years, and he has a reputation in our social circle for being controlling and manipulative. I kept my concerns private, partly because it wasn't my place, and partly because I didn't want to be labeled as the negative sibling. When Emma started planning her wedding, things escalated quickly. She decided she wanted a large, elaborate wedding with all our extended family and mutual friends invited. That would have been fine, except she started making demands that clearly excluded me in subtle ways. Invitations were technically sent to me, but they came with conditions that were not mentioned to anyone else. For example, she insisted that I could not bring my partner of 5 years, Alex, unless I sat at a designated table away from her friends. She also requested that I not bring my cousin's kids, even though they are family and were invited by other relatives. At first, I brushed it off as her being stressed, but the more I talked to other relatives, the more I realized this was intentional. I tried to talk to Emma about it several times. I called her and explained that it felt hurtful and isolating to be treated differently from other guests. She laughed it off, saying I was overreacting and that she wanted the wedding to feel perfect, implying that my presence with my partner and other family members would somehow ruin it. I reminded her that weddings are supposed to be about bringing people together, but she got defensive, accusing me of being dramatic and not understanding her vision. At that point, I started feeling like attending would make me look like I condoned her behavior, which I couldn't do. I also brought this up with our parents, hoping they would mediate. My mom seemed sympathetic, but ultimately said that it was Emma's day and that I should just go and be happy for her. My dad told me that refusing to go would cause irreparable damage to the family dynamic, implying that I was being selfish. I reminded them that I had spent my entire life trying to accommodate Emma and her preferences, and that this wasn't just a random quarrel. It was part of a pattern. They didn't have much to say after that. As the wedding approached, I tried one last time to negotiate. I suggested that Alex and I could sit somewhere discreet or that I could attend only the ceremony and skip the reception. Emma flat out refused. She said that if I wasn't going to follow her rules, then I shouldn't come at all. It felt like a thinly veiled threat, and I realized that no compromise would be possible. After a week of agonizing over the decision, I finally told Emma I wouldn't be attending. I sent her a long message explaining why, detailing how the conditions she set were hurtful and discriminatory, and that I couldn't support a celebration that treated me and my partner as outsiders. I also mentioned that I still wanted a relationship with her, but couldn't compromise my self-respect. The fallout has been intense. Emma has accused me of being selfish and ruining her special day. She has posted several passive-aggressive messages on social media about family members who refuse to celebrate with us, and my parents have been subtly pressuring me to apologize and reconsider. Extended family members are divided. Some understand my stance, others think I'm overreacting. Alex has been supportive, but he's worried about the long-term impact on my relationship with my parents and sister. Some of my friends have told me that I was right to stand up for myself, while others argue that family events sometimes require compromise. I keep thinking about what attending would mean, pretending that everything is fine, enduring subtle humiliation, and ignoring years of accumulated hurt. On the other hand, I keep hearing that family relationships are fragile and that maybe I'm letting pride dictate my actions. At this point, I'm torn between holding my ground and trying to mend fences after the wedding. I genuinely want a healthy relationship with my sister and parents, but I also feel like attending under Emma's terms would erase my feelings entirely. I'm not sure if I handled this the right way, and whether refusing to attend makes me the bad guy in this situation. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding due to the way she has treated me and the conditions she imposed on my attendance. AITA for refusing to take care of my brother's kids during the holidays. I, 32F, have always had a fairly independent lifestyle. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which allows me to travel a lot, and I enjoy having my own space and time. My younger brother, James, 28M, on the other hand, has always been a bit more dependent on family. He got married 2 years ago and has 2 kids, ages 5 and 3. His wife, Clara, doesn't work, and James often relies heavily on our parents for childcare and general help with the kids. This year, James called me in early November asking if I could watch his children over the Christmas holidays. At first, I was hesitant because I had already booked a trip abroad with a few friends. I explained that I couldn't just cancel my plans, especially since tickets were non-refundable, and I had been planning this trip for months. He told me it was just a few days, and that he and Clara were stressed and could really use a break. I told him again that I couldn't, but he kept pushing, telling me I was being selfish and that family should help each other out. After a few rounds of texting, he finally sent a message that really bothered me. He wrote, "You've never been reliable. Mom and Dad can't do it all, and Clara really needs a break. If you loved your nieces and nephews at all, you'd step up." That really rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like he was trying to guilt-trip me into canceling a long-awaited trip that I had already invested time and money into. I decided to stick to my plans and responded, telling him politely but firmly that I would not be able to babysit. I also reminded him that he and Clara had chosen to have children and that planning for holidays is part of that responsibility. He didn't respond at first, but then things escalated. A week later, I got a long voice message from him. He sounded almost in tears and kept saying that I was the only family member not stepping up, that I was ruining Christmas for the kids, and that Mom and Dad were getting frustrated too. I called our mom to see if she had spoken to him, and she said that James had indeed called her multiple times, asking her to convince me to help. She told him she couldn't force me and that it was my right to say no. Despite that, James sent me another text. "I just don't understand why you can't put family first. You're always traveling, always busy with your life, but when it comes to us, you disappear. The kids will be disappointed. I can't believe you would do this." At this point, I was feeling a mix of guilt and frustration. Guilt because I didn't want the kids to be upset, but frustration because James was being manipulative and making me feel responsible for his choices. I didn't respond right away, but later I sent a message explaining my side. I love you and the kids, but I cannot rearrange my life for every holiday or occasion. I have plans that I've been working on for months, and I cannot cancel them. I understand that you need help, but it is your responsibility to plan ahead. I will see the kids another time, and we can celebrate together, but I cannot take on the holidays this year. He replied almost immediately with a very short, cold text. Fine. Thanks for nothing. Things got tense at our family Christmas gathering. James barely spoke to me, and Clara kept giving me these looks that felt accusatory. My parents tried to mediate, saying things like, "We understand she has plans, but it's also hard for you guys." I felt caught in the middle because I didn't want to ruin anyone's holiday, but I also felt like my boundaries were being completely disregarded. After that, James started posting on social media about how family should come first and tagging pictures of his kids, implying that I was absent or uncaring. Some mutual friends started messaging me privately, asking if I was okay and why I wasn't helping, which made me feel even more pressured. The turning point for me was a private message from Clara. She said, "I hope you realize how much stress this has caused. James is upset and the kids are disappointed. I don't know why you can't just help for a few days." I responded gently, trying to explain that my absence wasn't about not caring, but about prior commitments and personal boundaries. She didn't reply. Since then, the relationship between James and me has been icy. He refuses to talk to me without tension, and family gatherings feel awkward. My parents say they understand my position, but are concerned that James is going to hold a grudge. Some relatives have even subtly mentioned that maybe I should have just made it work for the kids. I've been feeling a mix of guilt, anger, and frustration. I don't want to hurt my family, but I also feel strongly that my own plans and autonomy matter. I have helped James and Clara in the past, watching the kids for a few hours, babysitting occasionally, helping with errands, but the holidays are the one time I have to prioritize myself, especially after a stressful year of work and personal commitments. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to take care of my brother's kids during the holidays, even though he asked repeatedly and implied that I was being selfish. I feel like I've drawn a reasonable boundary, but the backlash has been intense, and I can't tell if I'm actually in the wrong. AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend's friend live with us indefinitely, even though he says it's temporary. I, 30F, have been dating my boyfriend, Mark, 32M, for 4 years, and we moved in together about 2 years ago. We have a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Life has been great for us. We each have steady jobs, we split bills evenly, and we've built a routine that works well for both of us. I enjoy hosting the occasional guest for a few nights, but I highly value my personal space, privacy, and stability. A couple of months ago, Mark's friend from college, Jason, 31M, reached out to Mark. Jason lost his apartment due to a lease dispute and was struggling to find anything affordable in the city. Mark immediately suggested that Jason could stay with us for a while until he gets back on his feet. I was caught off guard because Mark didn't ask me beforehand. I told him I was uncomfortable with the idea, especially since a while had not been defined and our apartment is not large enough to comfortably host another adult long-term. Mark insisted that it would only be temporary, maybe a month or 2, and that it would help Jason avoid homelessness. I understand that he wants to help, and I empathize with Jason's situation, but I also know that even a month with another adult in a small apartment can feel invasive. I try to set boundaries. Jason could visit occasionally, stay a weekend if needed, or we could help him find a short-term Airbnb or sublet. Mark rejected all these ideas, saying that nothing else would work and that I was being unsympathetic. Jason moved in last week, and, as I feared, the situation has been disruptive. He has very different habits than we do. He stays up late, eats our food without asking, leaves dishes in the sink, and sometimes invites friends over without checking with us. He also assumes he can use our living room for work calls, which conflicts with Mark's schedule. I've tried to address these issues calmly, but Jason brushes them off, saying he'll try to improve later, and Mark usually sides with him or laughs it off. I feel trapped. I'm living in my own home, but I no longer feel like I have control over my space. I can't work from home without interruptions. I feel anxious all the time, and I'm constantly cleaning up after someone else. When I express frustration, Mar tells me I'm overreacting or that I should be more accommodating because Jason is a friend in need. I understand that, but I also feel like my boundaries are being ignored. I've suggested that Jason start looking for his own place, that we set a strict move-out date, or that we all sit down and establish household rules. Mark refuses, saying he doesn't want to pressure Jason and that he'll leave when he's ready. Jason also seems to think he can stay indefinitely, as he talks about job prospects, potential roommates, and city life as if he's now part of our household permanently. Friends have weighed in, and opinions are divided. Some say I should be more understanding and generous, especially since Jason has no other place to go. Others agree that Mark is disregarding my feelings and that it's unreasonable to allow someone to live in our small apartment without limits. I feel guilty because I do care about Jason and his situation, but I also know that my well-being and my relationship with Mark are being negatively impacted. The tension between Mark and me has escalated. We argue frequently about Jason's behavior, the lack of boundaries, and the stress it's causing. Mark says I'm unsupportive and that I'm treating Jason unfairly. I feel like I'm being painted as the bad guy for wanting my home to remain a safe and stable environment. I've also considered compromise. I offered to pay for a temporary Airbnb for Jason while he looks for work and an apartment, suggested splitting a rental with another friend, and offered to help him financially in small, manageable ways that wouldn't intrude on our space. Both Jason and Mark reject these options. So, AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend's friend live with us indefinitely, even though he says it's temporary and he has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to me. I, 29F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, has a history of making impulsive decisions and expecting everyone to accommodate her. Growing up, it caused tension, but I always tried to be supportive. Recently, however, things have escalated to a point where I'm questioning whether our relationship is even salvageable. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and initially, I was thrilled for her. I tried to help with the planning where I could, giving her advice on vendors, seating arrangements, and even budgeting. I have a stable career and have always been the one who handles practical things in our family, so I thought my input would be welcome. Instead, it quickly became a source of conflict. The first major issue arose when Emily decided she wanted a very expensive destination wedding. The location she picked is a small, remote town that requires most guests to fly in and pay for lodging on top of the already high wedding costs. She made it clear that she expected family members to cover these expenses. I told her frankly that I couldn't afford a trip like that on top of the other obligations I already had. She brushed it off, claiming I was being dramatic and that it wasn't that expensive if I planned carefully. My parents also offered to help me pay, but Emily insisted she didn't want me to owe anyone anything and continued to pressure me. I decided to set boundaries and told her that I would attend if I could do so without causing financial strain, and otherwise, I'd send a gift. This didn't sit well with her. She began guilt-tripping me with messages like, "I can't believe my own sister wouldn't do this for me," and "You've never really supported me." I tried to reason with her, explaining that supporting her doesn't mean going bankrupt or compromising my mental health. Then things got worse. About 3 months before the wedding, Emily asked me to be the maid of honor. At first, I was touched and considered accepting, but the more I learned about what she expected, the more impossible it seemed. She wanted me to organize multiple large-scale pre-wedding events across different states, handle RSVPs and seating charts entirely on my own, cover some costs for these events, be on call 24/7 to mediate conflicts with vendors or family members, and write and deliver an extremely long, emotional speech that she insisted be perfect. When I tried to tell her that these demands were overwhelming and that I wasn't in a position to manage everything, she reacted poorly. She accused me of being selfish and said she couldn't believe I wouldn't do this for her after everything I've done for the family. I reminded her that I have a demanding job in my own life, but she insisted that family comes first and that I was failing as a sister. About a month later, the final straw came. Emily decided she wanted a themed wedding with very strict rules for guests, specific colors, specific styles, and even dietary restrictions that weren't clearly communicated in invitations. She also insisted that everyone must participate in a complicated set of performances during the reception, which included singing, dancing, and acting out scenes. She asked me to coordinate everyone and personally train them. When I expressed that this was too much and outside my capabilities, she accused me of sabotaging her big day and said I was choosing myself over family. I realized that attending under these conditions would be unbearable. I also knew that if I tried to meet her expectations, I would end up exhausted, stressed, and probably resentful. I had to make a difficult decision. I emailed Emily a detailed, heartfelt message explaining that I couldn't participate in the wedding as she envisioned and that I would not be attending. I expressed that this decision didn't mean I didn't love her, but that I needed to protect my own well-being. I also sent a gift along with a note wishing her happiness. The response I got was devastating. Emily exploded on me in a group chat with our parents, accusing me of being cruel, selfish, and the worst sister imaginable. She said that my absence would ruin her wedding and that I clearly didn't care about our family. Our parents, caught in the middle, were upset but also somewhat sympathetic. They tried to mediate, telling her that my concerns were valid, but she refused to listen. Since then, our relationship has been tense. Emily won't speak to me except to send angry texts about how I've ruined everything and made her feel abandoned on her special day. My parents are frustrated, saying I should just go and suffer through it to maintain family harmony. I feel torn because I genuinely love my sister, but I also feel that being forced into an impossible situation would have been harmful for me emotionally and financially. I've considered whether I overreacted or should have handled things differently. Some friends say I should have gone anyway and just tried my best, but others say I made the right choice by setting boundaries. I don't want to be estranged from my sister, but I also don't think I should sacrifice my well-being to appease her. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she piled all these unreasonable expectations on me and ignored my concerns? The tension in my family is palpable, and I honestly don't know how to repair things without either compromising myself or continuing to be vilified. My sister thinks I am heartless, my parents are disappointed, and I feel like I am trapped in a no-win situation. I want to do the right thing, but I also want to respect my own limits. Every attempt to explain myself seems to fall on deaf ears, and now I'm questioning if I can ever have a normal relationship with Emily again. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she refused to compromise on the guest list. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were close at times, but there were always underlying tensions, mainly around how different our personalities and priorities are. I'm very practical and financially cautious, whereas Emily tends to be more extravagant and emotional when it comes to life decisions. Our parents have always been loving, but also enable some of her more impulsive tendencies, which has caused friction between us over the years. A few months ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Daniel, 30M. I was genuinely happy for her, and she was excited to include me in the planning process. I've always been someone who likes organization and budgeting, so she initially asked me for advice on how to handle the wedding expenses since she was worried about the cost. We had several conversations about prioritizing certain aspects and cutting down on others without sacrificing the overall experience. I offered ideas like limiting the guest list to close family and friends, choosing a less expensive venue, and possibly negotiating with vendors. I even offered to help her draft a detailed budget spreadsheet. However, as the wedding plans progressed, I started noticing a recurring pattern. Emily began insisting on features and expenses that were completely outside the budget she had initially set. She also started inviting people she had only met a few times or who had no real connection in her life, claiming she didn't want anyone to feel left out. This included coworkers, distant relatives, and even acquaintances of Daniel. At first, I tried to reason with her, explaining that including so many people would not only dramatically increase costs, but also put a lot of stress on everyone involved. She dismissed my concerns, telling me I was being cheap and controlling. Eventually, Emily came to me with what she called the final budget and casually mentioned that she expected me to cover a substantial portion of the expenses. I was shocked because the amount was astronomical, far beyond anything we had discussed, and it included extras like a custom floral chandelier, a fireworks show, and a live band for 6 hours. I told her I couldn't afford that and that it wasn't my responsibility to fund her dream wedding. I suggested revising the guest list or scaling back on some of the extravagant elements, but she became upset and accused me of trying to ruin her special day. At this point, our parents got involved. They told me that it was traditional for the older sibling to contribute to weddings if they could afford it, and implied that I was being selfish. I tried explaining my financial limitations and the principle that a wedding should not bankrupt anyone, but they argued that I was not being supportive. My fiancé also weighed in, saying that paying for part of the wedding could be seen as a gesture of love and family solidarity, but I felt uncomfortable with the idea of going into debt for something that wasn't my responsibility. The situation came to a head a few weeks ago. Emily insisted that I pay at least half of the remaining costs, or she would not allow me to be part of the wedding in any official capacity, meaning no bridesmaid duties, no speeches, nothing. I refused, and she responded by publicly accusing me of being selfish and uncaring in front of several family members. She also started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about siblings who don't support each other. The tension escalated when I offered to help in non-financial ways, like assisting with decorations, coordinating the rehearsal dinner, or helping with logistics. Emily refused, saying that my help was not enough and that money was the only thing that mattered. I felt cornered and deeply hurt because I genuinely wanted to be involved and make her day special, but it seemed like nothing short of paying an enormous sum would satisfy her. We haven't spoken much since then. My parents are upset with me, and several extended family members have started taking sides. Some think I should just pay to keep the peace, while others say Emily is being unreasonable. I've tried explaining that I love her and want her to have a wonderful wedding, but I cannot and will not put myself in financial danger for it. I also worry that giving in now would set a precedent for future expectations from her or other family members. I understand that weddings are emotional and that people want the best for their special day, but I also feel that she is being manipulative and unreasonable by making participation contingent on me giving a huge amount of money. I am torn because I want to support my sister, but I also don't want to compromise my financial stability or principles. So, AITA for refusing to pay for a significant portion of my sister's wedding, even though it has caused a huge family rift. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process. I, 28F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 25F. We grew up in a small town, shared a room for years, and had countless inside jokes that only we understood. That being said, Emily has always had a strong personality, and I've often been the one to compromise to keep the peace. I never minded, because I genuinely love being there for her. Our relationship was mostly smooth, though not without its occasional tension, usually over trivial things. Everything seemed fine until Emily got engaged last year. She and her fiancé, Mark, 27M, have been dating for 4 years, and we all thought it was a natural progression in their relationship. The announcement itself was wonderful, and I was genuinely excited for her. However, when she started talking about wedding planning, I immediately noticed a shift in her attitude toward me. She became secretive about every detail, and while she publicly said she wanted my input, she rarely actually asked for it. I tried to involve myself in subtle ways. I offered to help look at venues, send out invites, and even suggested vendors I had heard good things about. Every time, Emily would thank me, but ultimately go with her own choice, dismissing my suggestions without any real explanation. At first, I brushed it off as her wanting to make the day her own. But things escalated when she started having private planning meetings with Mark, her friends, and even our parents, but not me. Invitations to these meetings were either forgotten, ignored, or labeled as not necessary. I confronted her about it politely, asking if I could be included in at least one of the planning meetings since I had experience organizing events for friends. She laughed it off, saying, "It's just easier this way. You'll see everything soon enough." I wanted to believe her, so I tried to let it slide. But then the invitations arrived. Emily had specifically left me off the list of anyone involved in wedding day responsibilities. I was not a bridesmaid, not allowed to give a reading, and not even asked to help with the rehearsal dinner. On top of that, she arranged the seating chart and wedding party photo lineup in a way that completely excluded me from all main photos, including family portraits. When I questioned her again, she said, "You're overthinking it. Nobody does all that anymore." I felt like she was intentionally minimizing my presence, despite years of closeness. The breaking point came when she revealed the wedding registry. Every item I thought we had agreed to for her apartment, because she had previously asked for my help choosing some of her things, was either removed or altered without telling me. My suggestions were replaced entirely, and she had gone behind my back to choose items from friends and her in-laws instead. It wasn't just about gifts. It felt like a deliberate effort to erase any influence I might have had on a major milestone in her life. I sat down with my parents to discuss it, hoping they would mediate. They sided with Emily, saying that planning a wedding is stressful and she's allowed to make choices without input from anyone. My mother even said, "You should be happy she didn't exclude you from the actual ceremony entirely." I tried to explain that it wasn't just about a single choice. It was the cumulative effect of being sidelined in every significant decision. They seemed sympathetic, but ultimately passive, advising me to just show up, smile, and enjoy the day. I decided to attend the engagement party she hosted to see if I could mend things before the wedding. It was awkward from the start. Emily barely spoke to me and spent most of the evening with her fiancé and a circle of friends I hardly knew. When I tried to engage in conversation or offer help with hosting duties, she brushed me off. By the end of the night, I realized that showing up at the wedding as a guest would mean playing a role in a celebration where my presence was neither wanted nor valued. The thought made me feel invisible and hurt, and I started seriously considering skipping the wedding entirely. I didn't want to create a scene or start a family feud, so I tried reaching out to Emily one last time. I sent a message explaining that I felt excluded and hurt, and I asked if there was a way to be more involved or at least acknowledged during the wedding. She replied with a short message saying, "I don't understand why you're making this about yourself. You'll be there, just like everyone else." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of my feelings, nothing. After that, I made the decision not to attend. I sent her a message explaining that I couldn't in good conscience participate in an event where I felt deliberately sidelined. I didn't accuse her, I didn't insult her, I simply expressed my feelings and stated my decision. Predictably, this caused a huge blow-up. Emily called me multiple times, left frantic voicemails, and even texted my parents claiming that I was being dramatic and overly sensitive. My parents, rather than supporting me, urged me again to just go to the wedding and keep the peace. My friends were divided. Some said I should go for family appearances, while others said I was right to protect my emotional health. It's been 6 months since I declined to attend, and Emily hasn't spoken to me much outside of obligatory family events. The rest of the family is uncomfortable and sometimes pressures me to forgive and forget for the sake of appearances. Meanwhile, I genuinely feel like my sister's wedding wasn't just a party. It was a boundary test, and I failed it because she made it clear I wasn't welcome in the planning or the spotlight. I'm aware this may sound extreme. I know some people might say weddings are stressful and people make unilateral decisions. I get that, but this felt like an intentional pattern of exclusion, not a series of innocent oversights. I love my sister, but I also feel like this is the first major adult conflict in our relationship where I had to choose my own mental and emotional well-being over family expectations. I don't know if I'll ever attend her wedding retrospectively through videos or photos. I can't help but feel hurt and slightly betrayed. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process and essentially erased my role in it. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her new boyfriend to our family reunion after the drama he caused last year. So, this is going to be long because the situation is complicated to say the least. My sister, let's call her Emma, has always been the more spontaneous one in our family. I, on the other hand, am very careful about planning and making sure everyone is comfortable and happy. Every year, our family has a big reunion at my parents' house, and it's a huge deal for everyone because we don't all live in the same state. Last year, Emma showed up with a new boyfriend she'd been dating for maybe 2 months. Let's call him Jason. From the moment he arrived, things were tense. Jason immediately started making jokes about people's weight, their jobs, their lifestyles. It was subtle at first, like the occasional, "Oh, you still work at that job?" Or, "Wow, you've gained a little weight, huh?" He laughed it off, claiming he was just kidding, but a lot of family members, including my parents, were clearly uncomfortable. My sister laughed along with him, but tried to brush it off when I confronted her quietly about it later. The real breaking point happened during the group dinner. My mother had cooked a huge meal, everything from roast beef to homemade pies. Jason, apparently trying to be funny, started pointing out every single thing he didn't like about the food. He made a big scene about the roast being dry, said the mashed potatoes looked kind of weird, and refused to touch the pies because he didn't like fruit. At that point, my aunt, who is usually the calmest person, actually snapped at him. He laughed it off and said she was too sensitive and that nobody should take life so seriously. By dessert, the tension had escalated to the point where 2 cousins got into a heated argument with him over something unrelated, just out of frustration from his attitude. It ended with him storming out, my sister following him, and a lot of crying and arguing between family members. The rest of the evening was basically ruined, with people leaving early and my parents looking extremely stressed. Fast forward to this year, Emma is once again talking about bringing a new boyfriend to the reunion. She actually tried to justify bringing Jason again, saying that he wasn't that bad, and that people just don't get his sense of humor. I reminded her of last year's chaos, and she rolled her eyes and said I was exaggerating. I pointed out that half the family had to leave early and that my parents were traumatized for days, but she insisted that he's changed and that I'm being unreasonable. I made the decision to tell her that Jason will not be welcome at the reunion this year. I said it's not just about me or anyone else's personal feelings. It's about ensuring the event runs smoothly and everyone feels safe and comfortable. I suggested that she come alone or bring someone else. She got extremely upset, accusing me of being controlling and saying that I was ruining her fun and that I always try to dictate who she can or cannot date. We ended up having a huge argument over text and then on the phone. She accused me of being unfair, and I tried to explain that I am not banning her from coming, just the person who caused major family disruption. She replied that I was treating her like a child and that if my parents were real parents, they would have stopped me from making this decision. I eventually texted my parents separately to explain the situation and ask for their support, but now they're in a weird position. They feel bad for last year's events, but also don't want to come between us. My parents told me that they trust my judgment and that they will talk to Emma, but they also warned me that she might not come at all if she feels like she's being punished. Some family members have reached out to me privately. My cousins and aunts/uncles are mostly on my side, saying that last year was chaotic and that I'm doing the right thing to avoid a repeat. But a few of my cousins texted me, saying I might be overreacting and that people should be allowed to bring whoever they want, and that maybe I should give them another chance. Honestly, I feel like I'm being reasonable. I'm not banning my sister from the reunion, just someone who has a documented history of causing major disruption. But my sister is furious and refuses to even talk about it calmly. She says that family is supposed to be supportive and that by excluding him, I'm creating a toxic environment. I'm feeling really conflicted because I don't want to ruin my sister's chance to come, but I also don't want a repeat of last year's disaster. I've tried explaining calmly that it's about maintaining peace and comfort for everyone, not trying to control her life. She's accusing me of being judgmental and says that my decision is unfair because it's based on last year and not on who he is now. I'm worried that if I stick to my decision, she might not come at all, and I don't want to disappoint the rest of the family who look forward to the reunion every year. At the same time, if I let him come, I'm almost certain that history will repeat itself. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her new boyfriend to our family reunion because of the chaos he caused last year. AITA for refusing to let my mother move into my house after she retired, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. I, 38F, have been living in my current house for about 7 years. It's a 3-bedroom home that I bought after years of saving. I live alone with my dog, and my life is pretty structured. My work as a software engineer requires long hours of focus, and I rely heavily on my routines to stay balanced. I've always been close to my mother, Diane, 63F, but she's always been a very independent person who enjoys socializing, traveling, and doing things her way. A few months ago, my mother retired. She initially planned to travel and even considered moving closer to her friends, but she ran into financial difficulties. She realized that her retirement savings won't cover all her expenses, especially rent and health care. So she called me and asked if she could move in with me, at least temporarily. She said temporarily might be a few months while she sorts out her finances, looks for a smaller place, or figures out what she wants to do next. I was taken aback. I love my mom and want to support her, but my house is only 3 bedrooms, with one serving as my office, and I live a very structured life. Having someone else move in indefinitely would disrupt my routine, add responsibilities I'm not prepared for, and compromise my privacy and personal space. I told her I couldn't have her move in permanently, and I offered alternatives, helping her find a smaller, affordable apartment, assisting with moving costs, helping her apply for any available financial support, or even contributing to temporary housing like a short-term rental or Airbnb. My mother was upset and said I was being selfish. She told me that family should come first and that I am prioritizing my comfort over her well-being. She said that she has no other relatives nearby and that if I don't let her stay, she might be forced to live in a retirement facility she doesn't want, or worse, become homeless. I tried to explain that helping her does not have to mean her living in my house, and that I want to support her in other meaningful ways. She accused me of making excuses and said I was avoiding responsibility as her child. I've thought about the logistics, and I genuinely believe this would be unmanageable. My office is essential for my work, and sharing the house would mean compromising it. Cooking, cleaning, and general household management would become complicated with 2 adults and a dog in the mix. Even if she stayed temporarily, I know from experience with other house guests that temporary arrangements often extend beyond the initial period. I worry that allowing her to move in could lead to months of tension, disrupted routines, and potential resentment on both sides. I also worry about my finances. While I could technically support her for a short time, her staying indefinitely would increase costs for groceries, utilities, and general living expenses. She has a history of not budgeting carefully, and I would likely have to cover any shortfall, which is stressful for me. I've tried to frame this in a way that shows I'm willing to help without compromising myself, offering temporary financial support, helping her search for housing, and helping her navigate her retirement budget. The issue has caused tension between us. My mom keeps reminding me that she raised me and sacrificed for me, implying that I owe her this support. She also says that saying no is morally wrong and that I should put family first, even if it's inconvenient. Friends are divided. Some say I'm right to maintain boundaries, that helping her doesn't require letting her live with me, and that I should protect my own well-being. Others say that family obligations come first and that I should make sacrifices, at least for a while, to help my mom. My mom has even started looking up retirement communities nearby and calling them to see what the cost would be, then texting me saying that none of them are acceptable, implying that I'm leaving her with no viable options. I feel guilty because I don't want her to feel abandoned, but I also feel like I have to protect my space, mental health, and personal life. I've tried to compromise further. I offered to pay for a temporary Airbnb while she searches for a permanent place, help her manage a monthly budget, and even assist with negotiating smaller rent or a room in a shared housing situation. She refuses all these alternatives, saying that nothing works unless she moves in with me, and that I'm being inflexible. I feel stuck because I genuinely want to help my mother, but I also know my limits. I worry that refusing her will damage our relationship, but I also fear that agreeing will create tension, stress, and potentially long-term resentment. I've tried to explain that my support can take many forms, not just cohabitation, but she doesn't seem to accept that. So, AITA for refusing to let my mother move into my house after she retired, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a long-standing family issue. I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, our parents favored her in ways that made me feel invisible. They would excuse her bad behavior and celebrate her achievements, while I was often criticized for similar things. I never felt resentment until I reached my late teens, but by then, a lot of the damage had already been done. I tried to bridge the gap with her over the years, but she tended to be extremely self-centered and dismissive of my feelings, which has only pushed me further away. Our interactions have always been polite at best, but emotionally distant. Fast forward to last year, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 31M, and immediately started planning an extravagant wedding. I was invited, of course, and when she sent me the formal invite, I noticed that the seating arrangements listed me at a table with people I barely know and included my parents, who I no longer speak to due to ongoing family drama. I reached out to Emily to discuss my discomfort about sitting with people I don't get along with, but she brushed me off, insisting it was just the way it had to be. Around the same time, Mark's family also started reaching out to me. I had never met most of them, and honestly, I wasn't interested in forced socializing. I explained my reasons politely, mentioning that the past tensions within my own family make large gatherings stressful for me, especially ones that are meant to celebrate her. Emily's response was hurtful. She said she couldn't believe I would consider not coming to her wedding, and that my absence would cast a shadow on her special day. I felt guilty, but I also knew that attending under those circumstances would cause me extreme anxiety and likely end up in a confrontation with my parents. As the wedding date approached, Emily ramped up her efforts to make me feel guilty. She sent me photos of dresses, videos of venue tours, and constant updates about the guest list. Each message included subtle digs about me being distant or uncaring. I tried to ignore the messages, but they only increased in intensity. At one point, she even called me in tears, saying that she can't imagine her wedding without her big brother there, and that my absence would make her think I don't love her. I tried explaining that my feelings of love are complicated due to years of emotional neglect, but she wasn't receptive. 2 weeks before the wedding, I finally decided to have an honest conversation. I told her that I could not attend because the thought of navigating the family tensions, sitting at awkward tables, and pretending everything was fine was too overwhelming. I emphasized that my decision wasn't about her fiancé or her happiness. It was about my own mental well-being. Emily exploded. She accused me of being selfish, said I was ruining her happiness, and that I had always been jealous of her. My parents jumped in, claiming I was overreacting and that family comes first. Mark's parents also expressed disappointment, asking me to reconsider and even offered to seat me separately to make things easier. I politely declined all offers. After I declined, the family divide widened. Emily stopped speaking to me entirely, and my parents began sending passive-aggressive messages about how I was missing out on family memories. Social media became a minefield, with photos of the wedding captioned with vague posts about absent relatives. Mutual friends reached out to ask if I was okay, and I felt both relieved and judged at the same time. I haven't spoken to Emily since, though my parents occasionally send me updates as if nothing happened. My friends are split on the situation. Some think I did the right thing by prioritizing my mental health and refusing to participate in a toxic environment. Others think I should have attended, at least for a few hours, to keep the peace and avoid long-term family resentment. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting, but another part feels that attending would have been a betrayal of myself. I've tried to make amends indirectly. I sent Emily a heartfelt letter after the wedding expressing my love and hope that one day we could reconnect, but she hasn't responded. I also sent a gift with a note explaining that I was thinking of her and Mark, but again, no acknowledgement. My parents say I need to forgive and forget to restore family harmony, but I'm not sure that's possible without Emily acknowledging the past patterns of favoritism and dismissiveness. I realize that my absence may have hurt Emily deeply, but I also feel that the insistence that I compromise my mental health for appearances is unreasonable. I've been reflecting on whether I could have handled things differently, but given the history, I honestly feel like I made the only decision that would allow me to maintain my sense of self and boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of years of unresolved family issues and ongoing emotional pressure. Character count, 6,375. AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she refused to help me when I was struggling. I, 32F, have always tried to be the supportive sibling, but lately, my patience has been stretched to its limit. A little context. I grew up with my sister, Emily, 29F, and our relationship has always been somewhat strained. Emily is charming and outgoing, while I've always been more reserved and practical. Growing up, Emily often got what she wanted because of her personality, while I was the one expected to keep the peace and handle responsibilities. I thought things would balance out once we were adults, but apparently, some things never change. About 5 years ago, I was going through a particularly rough time. I had just lost my job due to downsizing, my car had broken down, and I was living paycheck to paycheck. During this period, I had to rely on my sister for support on more than one occasion, mostly for rides and some financial help with groceries. I wouldn't say she ignored me entirely, but her support was minimal. She would offer advice, but when I asked for concrete help, like a loan or even a place to stay for a few days when my apartment's heating failed, she would make excuses or say she couldn't because of her own busy schedule. Fast forward to now. I managed to stabilize my life. I have a steady job, a small but nice house in the suburbs, and I've started saving. Things are going well. Emily, on the other hand, recently got engaged and immediately started planning a big wedding. She wants in our hometown, and she specifically asked me if she could use my house for the reception because it has a large backyard, and she knows it's cheaper than renting a venue. I was taken aback. My house is my sanctuary. I love hosting small get-togethers, but I rarely have big crowds, and I definitely don't want a wedding-sized event in my backyard. I gently told her that I wasn't comfortable hosting the reception in my house. She looked surprised and said, "But I thought you'd help me like I've helped you." I was confused because, frankly, she hadn't really helped me in any meaningful way when I was struggling. I tried to remind her, saying, "Remember when I had no car and no income and asked for a week to crash at your place while my heater was broken? You said you were busy. Or when I needed a small loan for groceries, you weren't able to help. I don't see how this is the same as what you're asking now." She got defensive and said, "That was different. I had my own life, and you weren't exactly polite about asking." I paused because I know I wasn't always perfect, but I felt like she was twisting reality. I asked, "So now it's fine to expect me to give up my space for a big wedding, but then my problems weren't important enough for you to lend a hand?" After that, she started guilt-tripping me. She said things like, "I guess I shouldn't have counted on my family," and "I thought you'd be happy to help me on one of the most important days of my life." I stayed firm. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't willing to compromise my home and my comfort for something that felt unfair, especially considering the lack of support in the past. She got very upset and ended up calling my parents. I thought my parents would be neutral, but they kind of took her side, saying I was selfish and that family should help each other. I tried to explain my point of view, that I wasn't refusing to support her wedding financially or emotionally, just that I didn't want to host it at my house. My parents said, "It doesn't have to be your house forever. It's one day," which I understand in theory, but emotionally, I felt like it was a culmination of years of feeling taken advantage of. After that conversation, Emily hasn't spoken to me much, aside from occasional passive-aggressive texts. One of her texts said, "I guess some people's support is only conditional." It made me feel guilty for a moment, but then I reminded myself that I am not obligated to put my comfort aside for someone who wasn't there for me when I needed them. Some of my friends say I'm completely in the right, that my house is my personal space and I have every right to say no. Others say I should just let it slide and think about the bigger picture of family harmony. I can understand the argument for harmony, but I also feel like my boundaries matter. I'm not asking her to host the wedding elsewhere at her own expense. I'm just saying I won't be opening my home. AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she didn't help me when I was struggling. AITA for refusing to help my sister financially even though she's always relied on me. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, on the other hand, has always been more impulsive. She moves from job to job, relationship to relationship, and while she's incredibly charming, she doesn't seem to understand the concept of long-term financial planning. Our parents try to teach her responsibility, but it mostly fell on deaf ears. As a result, I've often found myself in the position of bailing her out, whether it was lending her money for rent, helping cover emergency vet bills for her dog, or even driving her to job interviews when her car broke down. I've done it because I love her and because our parents passed away when we were young, so I felt like I needed to step up. The situation that led to this conflict started about 6 months ago. Emily called me, panicked, saying her car had broken down and she had no way to get to work. She was behind on rent, and her landlord had already sent a notice. She asked if I could lend her $1,500 so she could pay her rent and fix the car. My immediate thought was that she had gotten herself into this situation yet again, and I hesitated. I asked her what had happened and if she had a plan to prevent this from happening again. She got defensive, saying I was acting like our parents and didn't understand her struggles. She said everyone else in her life was too busy or selfish to help. So, of course, she was asking me. I explained that I could not give her money this time. I told her I loved her, but I was also trying to save for my first house, and I simply couldn't justify giving her $1,500 again when there was no guarantee she wouldn't just end up in the same situation a few months later. I suggested she look into a payment plan with her landlord, apply for short-term loans, or find a side job to cover her expenses. I even offered to help her figure out a budget if she wanted, but lending her money outright was off the table. She immediately blew up at me. She accused me of being selfish, cruel, and turning into our parents. She brought up all the times I had bailed her out in the past, saying that just because I had done it before didn't mean I could suddenly stop. She insisted I owed her because I had always been the responsible one, and she was counting on me. Our phone call ended with her screaming at me and hanging up. Since then, our relationship has become strained. She refuses to talk to me unless it's an emergency and has started posting subtle digs on social media about how family isn't always there when you need it. Meanwhile, I feel guilty because part of me wishes I could just give her the money and make the tension go away. But I also know that enabling her behavior has never helped her grow more responsible. Every time I've lent her money in the past without conditions, she's fallen right back into the same patterns. I can't keep repeating the same cycle. The rest of our family has weighed in as well. Our cousin, who lives nearby, told me I was right to set boundaries, but also warned that Emily might hold a grudge forever. On the other hand, one of our aunts thinks I'm being too harsh and says family should help each other no matter what. My friends are split too. Some say I'm being a good sister by refusing to enable her, and others say I'm cold and should just help her one more time. I'm left feeling torn. I want my sister in my life, but I also can't sacrifice my financial stability and emotional well-being every time she hits a rough patch. I've offered support in ways that don't involve money, like helping her brainstorm solutions or helping her search for a more reliable job. She just doesn't seem to see that as enough. I've tried reaching out a few times since the incident to reconcile, but she either ignores me or turns it into an argument. I'm not sure if this is the kind of conflict that time will heal or if I'm going to lose my sister because I finally said no. I can't stop thinking about whether I'm really being a bad person for prioritizing my own life, or if I'm justified in setting boundaries that protect me. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister money, even though she's always relied on me financially, and now she's holding a grudge for it? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his kids live with me, even though he claims he has no other choice. I, 36F, have a younger brother, Kevin, 32M, who has always been impulsive when it comes to life decisions, especially finances and relationships. He's had a few short-lived jobs and has bounced between apartments over the past decade. He has 2 children, ages 5 and 7, from his previous marriage, and they currently live with him and his ex-wife on a shared custody arrangement. Things were manageable until recently, when Kevin's girlfriend of 3 years moved in with him, and things quickly went downhill financially. She doesn't work, has significant debt, and insists on lavish spending despite Kevin's unstable income. Last month, Kevin called me in a panic. He said that his girlfriend had insisted on moving in with him permanently, but he couldn't afford it. His landlord had served him with an eviction notice because he missed rent payments for 2 months. He said that the children couldn't be homeless and that he had nowhere else to go. Then came the request. He wanted to move into my house temporarily with the kids and the girlfriend until he could get back on his feet. My house is a modest 3-bedroom that I live in alone. I have a home office I use for remote work and a fairly structured routine that helps me manage my life. I told Kevin that I could not accommodate him, the kids, and his girlfriend in my house. I explained that my home simply doesn't have enough space and that even short-term cohabitation with multiple people would disrupt my routines and create tension. I suggested alternatives. I could help him look for short-term rentals, contribute to part of his rent for a month, assist with moving costs, or help him connect with social services or housing programs. Kevin did not take this well. He accused me of being selfish and cold, saying that family should come first. He reminded me that I have a stable job and my own place, and that I should step up because he has nowhere else to go. He said it was the right thing to do, and that if I refused, I would be choosing comfort over family. I tried to explain that helping him doesn't have to involve letting him live in my home. I pointed out that moving 3 adults and 2 kids into my small house would create serious logistical issues. There's only 1 bathroom, the kitchen is small, and the kids' school and daycare schedules would clash with my work hours. I also reminded him of past visits. Every time he stayed over for even a weekend, he and the kids disrupted my household. Dishes left unwashed, toys scattered throughout the living room, arguments between adults, and late-night noise all happened frequently. I told him that I wasn't willing to repeat that on a larger scale. Kevin argued that this time would be different, but I didn't believe it. His girlfriend has a history of ignoring house rules and boundaries, and I couldn't risk the stress it would create in my life. Other family members are divided. Some say I should be helping my brother because he has children and the priority should be their safety. Others agree with me, saying that enabling Kevin and his girlfriend by letting them move in would likely be unhealthy for all of us and could lead to resentment or long-term tension. I've tried to compromise. I offered to help him financially for a short-term rental, drive him to interviews, help him update resumes, and even let him store some of his belongings at my place temporarily. He refused all these suggestions, insisting that living with me is the only solution. Kevin has become distant and angry. He occasionally sends guilt-laden texts saying that I don't care about family, and the kids have started asking why they can't come to my house. I feel horrible for them, but I also know that having them live here would be disruptive, stressful, and unfair to me. I've tried to frame my refusal in a supportive way, offering alternatives, financial help, and emotional support without allowing them to live with me. Kevin claims that none of that is helpful. The problem is that the situation has put a strain on my relationship with Kevin. I want to be supportive, but I also have to protect my mental health, my home, and my routines. I fear that if I cave, it will set a precedent for future crises, and Kevin may come to see my home as a fallback for all his financial mistakes. I also worry that my relationship with his children could be affected if tension arises from cohabitation. I feel stuck. I genuinely want to help Kevin and his kids, but I cannot allow them to move in with me. I've tried every alternative I can think of, but he refuses to accept them. I feel guilty because I worry that my refusal might make the kids feel abandoned or that Kevin will resent me for years. At the same time, I cannot compromise my own stability for an indefinite period. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother, his girlfriend, and his 2 children move into my house, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house after she kicked her dog out in the snow. So, this all started last weekend. I, 32F, live in a small city apartment with my husband, 34M, and our 2 cats. My sister, Lena, 28F, has always been a bit impulsive and dramatic, but I usually try to be supportive because she doesn't have many friends nearby. Recently, she adopted a dog, a medium-sized rescue named Max. From the beginning, I had reservations because she's not great at long-term planning and Max is a high-energy dog that needs consistent attention. I didn't say anything at first, but I worried. Anyway, last week, Lena called me in a panic. Apparently, she got into a huge fight with her boyfriend, and he kicked her out of their share apartment. She told me she had nowhere to go and asked if she could stay with me for a few days until she figured things out. Normally, I would have said yes, but then she dropped a bomb. She said, "Oh," and I left Max outside in the yard because I didn't want him to make a mess inside. I froze. I live in the city. We don't have a yard. I asked her to clarify. She said she had left him tied up in the snow in front of her building while she packed. I told her, "Lena, it's freezing out there. He's a dog. He can't stay outside for hours in this weather." She said he was fine, that he's used to being tough, and that she had left some water for him. I was furious. Not only did she abandon a dog she supposedly rescued, she was acting like this was no big deal. I told her I could not, under any circumstances, let her stay with me if she wasn't going to take responsibility for her dog. She started crying and yelling, saying I was being heartless and that she had nowhere else to go. I offered a compromise. She could stay if she brought Max inside and agreed to keep him safe, but she refused, saying she couldn't handle him indoors and that he would be messy and stressed. I refused to negotiate further. I told her I could not reward someone for treating an animal so recklessly. Then she dropped another bomb. She accused me of always taking my husband's side and claimed I had no empathy. She said, "You'd rather see me on the street than let me have a dog in your apartment? You're disgusting." I stayed calm and explained that empathy doesn't mean ignoring abuse or neglect, and that her behavior with Max was unacceptable. Things escalated over text after that. She sent me long messages about how she did everything she could, and dogs can handle a little cold. She threatened to tell our parents that I turned my back on her in her time of need. I didn't respond beyond reminding her that she needed to take care of her dog if she wanted my help. Eventually, she found a friend's apartment to crash at for the weekend. I later found out from a mutual friend that she had left Max outside for over 4 hours in the snow, and he was shivering and scared when someone finally brought him in. I was livid. I called Lena to check if Max was okay, and she said he was fine and probably happy to be outside. I hung up. Our parents got involved after hearing Lena's side of the story. They were furious with me at first, saying I should have helped her no matter what. I explained the situation, emphasizing that this was about animal welfare and not her personal crisis. My mom said I could have been more understanding, but my dad sided with me, saying it was not safe or responsible to let her stay under those conditions. Since then, Lena has barely spoken to me. She sent a long, accusatory message on social media calling me selfish and heartless for prioritizing a dog over her. My husband says I did the right thing because we cannot enable neglectful behavior, especially when it puts an animal at risk. But I feel guilty sometimes because I didn't help my sister when she really needed a place to stay. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my apartment because she abandoned her dog in the snow. I know the story is long, but there are a lot of nuances. I want to be clear. I don't think people should be homeless or without support. I understand she was in crisis, but the way she treated Max makes me feel like I cannot trust her judgment or responsibility around animals, and I didn't want to put my husband, our cats, or myself in a position where we had to deal with a neglected dog. I also wonder if I could have handled this differently, Maybe by offering help in another way, like letting her stay elsewhere temporarily or helping her find a pet-friendly shelter. But I did not feel comfortable compromising on Max's safety. My question is, was I really the bad person here for saying no? Should I have prioritized my sister's immediate crisis over the safety and well-being of an animal she clearly was not ready to care for responsibly? Or was I justified in setting this boundary, even if it upset her? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan my wedding, even though I'm paying for it? So I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, Mark 30M, for about 4 years, and we recently got engaged. Ever since I told my family, things have been tense to say the least. My older sister, Emily, 32F, has always had a bit of a controlling streak, but I never thought it would extend into my own wedding. The problem started almost immediately after I got engaged. I come from a pretty traditional family, and our wedding is really important to everyone. Mark and I both have careers that keep us busy, so we decided that I would handle most of the planning since I'm the one who has always wanted a traditional wedding, and Mark is happy to let me do my thing. However, my sister, Emily, insisted that she wanted to help with the planning. At first, I thought it would be nice to have her input since we're close in some ways, but it quickly became clear that her idea of helping meant controlling every single aspect. Emily's fiancé, Ryan, 33M, is another issue. Ryan is ambitious, to put it mildly. He's very assertive and likes to take the lead in situations where he has no authority. Within a week of my engagement announcement, Emily and Ryan started sending me Pinterest boards, color swatches, venue suggestions, catering options, and even cake designs. Some of the ideas were nice, but most were wildly out of line with what Mark and I wanted. For example, they suggested turning the ceremony into a medieval fair theme because Ryan apparently loves the Middle Ages. We're both in modern careers and definitely not interested in knights, jesters, or turkey legs at a wedding. I tried to politely decline. I explained that while I appreciated their enthusiasm, Mark and I had already made a list of what we wanted and were working on our own budget. I reminded them that the wedding, while in part funded by my parents, was ultimately our choice. That's when things started escalating. Emily's response was that she just wanted to help make sure it's perfect and that I should be grateful she and Ryan are contributing ideas since weddings are stressful. Ryan chimed in on group text with, "We can really make this amazing. Trust me, I know what looks good." At this point, it was less about helping and more about them taking over. The breaking point came when they sent me a contract for a venue they had already booked behind my back. They told me that they assumed I would love it and that it was non-refundable but totally worth it. The problem was that it was a small, rustic barn miles away from where we live, and Mark and I had already picked a venue we love closer to home that fit our budget and guest list. I was furious. I called Emily immediately to tell her that she had overstepped in the worst possible way. She argued that she had saved me from a boring, predictable wedding and accused me of being ungrateful. Ryan added that I should lighten up because everyone loves a surprise. I took a deep breath and made the decision to cut them out of the planning entirely. I explained that while I value their support, Mark and I were the ones getting married and that I didn't want any more surprises. Emily cried, accused me of being selfish, and said that this was the worst thing I could do to her. She even threatened not to attend the wedding if I didn't let her help. Things got worse when I told my parents about the situation. They sided with me at first, saying it was our wedding and our choice, but then Emily started calling them nonstop, crying and framing me as the villain who was keeping her away from her own sister's big day. My parents started looking worried and pressured me to compromise with Emily. I refused because I felt that letting them take control would ruin our wedding and create resentment between me and Mark. Since then, Emily has been passive-aggressive at family gatherings, making comments like, "I guess some people just don't want family involved," or "It's a shame you won't let anyone help make it special." Ryan has started posting on social media about planning the wedding his way and tagging Emily in posts that clearly annoy me. I've stopped responding to both of them online. I've also had friends weigh in. Some say I'm justified because it's my wedding and I should be able to plan it the way I want. Others have said that maybe I should let Emily have some input because she's family and will feel left out otherwise. The problem is any input I've accepted from her so far has been disregarded changed, or outright ignored because Ryan insists on his vision. I'm worried that if I try to compromise, I'll end up with a wedding that neither Mark nor I actually like. At this point, I've decided that Emily and Ryan will not be involved in any planning and will be told that any gifts they bring are appreciated, but that their presence in the actual planning process is over. I anticipate a huge fight when I formally tell them, but I feel like it's the only way to preserve my sanity and keep the wedding the way Mark and I want it. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé plan my wedding, even though she claims she's just helping. I feel like this should be obvious, but my parents are starting to question me, and Emily keeps saying I'm being dramatic and selfish. I'm looking for perspectives from people who have been in similar situations because I feel like I'm in a no-win scenario. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.